I grew up in Russia, but probably like many of you here, I actually identify with being more of a third culture kid. So my family has multiple backgrounds, lots of cultures, lots of languages, and actually lots of religions and worldviews that I grew up with. So my grandmother is a Muslim, my grandfather is an atheist, my dad is agnostic, I have this uncle who's very much into Eastern religions, and my mom, well, she was profoundly confused because you can't really make sense of it all, right? So all of that, again, imagine in Russia, which had 70 years of aggressive atheism, and by the time I was born just got out of it and kind of started rebuilding this sort of Eastern Orthodox Christianity. So that was confusing, right? But at the same time, that sort of just naturally invited me to think about worldviews, to think about religions, to ask questions. And one thing I realized is that oftentimes people say, you know, religions are all the same. They're all essentially about the same thing. And I want to challenge that, because that's definitely not my experience. That's definitely not what I saw in my own family. And that's definitely not what I see in all of these different worldviews, having studied them actually for a number of years now. You know how, let me give you just a very, very simple example. Let's talk about just how different worldviews talk about God, perceive God, right? That's the most basic thing, right? So let's start with Buddhism. Buddhism actually denies that sense of this personal God at all, right? There's no this kind of personal deity. If we move to Hinduism, which is supposed to be the closest thing, right, to Buddhism, there are millions of gods, right? Move into Islam, and yes, there is this one personal God, but he's definitely not Jesus. And then Christianity, Jesus is the Lord. How on earth are you supposed to put it all together? I think if we really, really think about it, we realize that maybe there are some similarities, but they're actually this kind of top layer, very superficial. If you scratch a little bit, try to go a little bit deeper in there, you realize they're profoundly, profoundly different. Now, my own personal experience was, okay, how am I gonna live with that? How am I gonna sort of make peace with my entire family? Because for years I was like, well, I can't really pick one. It will offend everyone, right? So I kind of looked at that and I was like, well, maybe I can just sort of cherry pick and take a little bit from here, a little bit from there, and kind of feel like I'm quite comfortable in this sort of state. But you know, actually, after a while I realized that that doesn't really work either, because I end up creating a God in my own image, right? I kind of look in the mirror and I'm like, what do I like? What do I not like? And I create something, this kind of weird creature that I call God, but it's not really God. And I think there was this profound moment for me when I realized, actually, I shouldn't go for what is comfortable and convenient for me. I should go for what is actually true. True. It really matters that if we follow something, if we put our lives into something, religion is important, right? It should be true. And so I think I came up with these kind of 3 questions that for me became this paradigm through which I look at different religions, this sort of, you know, sunglasses that I put on when I try to evaluate a particular worldview. So let's kind of just go through those 3 real quick, very simple ones. And Amy actually already started talking about it today with the question of, is it logical, right? You look at a particular worldview. Is it logical? Does it simply make sense? Sometimes you start reading, you start looking into different mythologies and ideas, and you realize ideas simply contradict each other. It doesn't really, really work. So you put that into that rubbish bin immediately, because if it doesn't work logically, it doesn't work at all, right? Second, once you figure out, yes, it is logical, then you ask the question, is there evidence? If I go back in history, if I go back into all these different manuscripts, if I explore archaeology, it's so exciting, right, to just go and explore things. Does it still make sense? Do I get enough evidence to actually put my life into it? And once you see that, yes, there is all of these things that actually help me define it as something good. Third question, if I apply this to my life, does it work? Does it make my life better? Does it change something? And you know, as I investigated different worldviews and different religions and tried to look through these lenses, I realized Christianity was not only making sense, it was actually profoundly affecting and changing my life. Profoundly affecting and changing my life. And I know this must be the experience for a lot of you here today, and maybe not for all, but another thing that is important is Jesus is the only leader of any religion who's ever claimed to be God. So Christianity actually stands or falls with Christ. So it's so verifiable, which means it's so testable. You can go and explore the person of Christ to know whether Christianity is actually true or not. And I guess final thought, it was, for me, the profound moment was when I was actually 15. I still lived in Russia, and I walked into this Eastern Orthodox church. I don't know if any of you have ever been. They're normally very tall, beautiful. There are these beautiful ceilings, and there's this kind of painting of heaven on the ceiling, you know, this kind of white light and clouds, and I was kind of looking at it and I was like, this is pretty. And then I realized they were kind of repainting that ceiling that day, and there was this huge staircase going down, and all of these workers, you know, they were kind of climbing up and down. And as I looked at this interesting picture, it suddenly dawned on me, this is what religions are about, right? Essentially, us sort of climbing up to heaven, us sort of trying to be good enough, or going through different stages of reincarnation or whatnot, trying to get there. And suddenly I realized the only worldview, the only religion that has something profoundly different there is Christianity. It talks about God actually coming down to us, because he likes us so much and he so wants to be with us. And that was the moment when I think I was sold out to Christianity.